Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Ware with the Brewers Association, and I'll be moderating the session today. I'm just going to jump right into it. Michael Vera is the founder of Craft Beer Advisory Services, CBAS, a market research and analytics firm exclusively dedicated to the craft beverage industry. He began his professional career in marketing research, advising some of the nation's top universities on attracting students and several Fortune 50 companies on improving brand perceptions. Combining his research skills and passion for craft beer, CBAS was born in the fall of 2021. Since its founding, Michael has delivered research to more than 500 breweries in 45 plus states and 10 plus countries. He's delivered a keynote presentation at Ohio's Craft Brewers Conference and talks at other events, including New Hampshire's annual Craft Beer Professionals, NanoCon, and Craft Beverage Expo, among others. CBAS research has been featured on Forbes, various business journals, and held 2 of the top 10 most read articles in craft brewing business in 2022. Michael, I'll let you take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for choosing to spend this hour together. Really excited to dive into a very data-forward, data-driven presentation. We'll be talking a lot about specific data points. There will be some graphs, but all in all, you will be walking away with specific understanding of what Gen Z is looking for compared to other generations, compared to drinking personas. We have a lot to dive into. In terms of agenda, I'll talk a little bit about the overall background and methodology of what you're actually going to be looking at. We'll look at the demographics and personas. There's a game that we're going to kick off with. Then we'll get into more of the data stuff. So background and methodology, what exactly are we going to be looking at for the next hour? We'll be looking at results from 2 nationwide direct-to-consumer surveys conducted last year in the last half of 2023. So for my company, we work with this panel company called Scent. They're at the bottom, and they have millions and millions of people taking surveys for them. And what we do is all the breweries that I work with, they submit questions. I organize it into one survey. That survey gets sent to a panel of craft beer drinkers across the United States. So one of the first questions that I get is, how do you know that these people actually drink craft beer? How do you know that they're drinking Blue Moon? They consider that craft versus local craft. There's a screener question in all of these surveys for folks. They have to have had a craft beer within the last month from a local brewery, and that's how we make sure that we're actually getting to the craft beer drinking population as opposed to people who are just trying to take surveys for money. Demographics of what we're going to be looking at today. The sample size of the combined surveys is a total of 660-some folks, 54% male, 46% female. Of the Gen Z group, 174 of the 661 were Gen Z. You see the splits there between millennials, Gen X, baby boomers. There will be some generational comparisons throughout the presentation today. And then on the left-hand side, there's this persona breakdown. I'm going to spend a brief moment talking about this breakdown: social drinker, foodie, and beer geek. Through the different research that we conduct throughout the year, these are the 3 personas that stick the most in terms of different visit motivators, different behaviors, why they would want to come to a brewery in the first place. So we will talk in depth about social drinkers, foodies, beer geeks, etc. So starting with the game, go ahead and take your phones out and scan that QR code. I'll give you a minute to do so. I'm going to switch over here in a second. If you don't have it yet, don't worry. The QR code's also on the next screen. And once I see that number kind of start pausing and topping out, we'll go ahead and start. Let me get the QR code showing up for anybody last second. And And a little screener for this game, the quicker questions get more points. So the faster you answer, the more likely you are to see yourself on the leaderboard, assuming you get it correct. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. 76, 77, oh, good thing I waited a minute. How many of y'all still waiting to get in? Anybody? All right, here we go. Question 1, which style of beer is Gen Z most likely to order? Lager, IPA, Pale Ale, Stout. Really should have some background music. If anybody's really good at singing, maybe Carrie, you can come up here. All right, correct answer is lager. There's going to be a fun little leaderboard. And also for folks that finish in the top 3, see me after because I have something for you. Right now AW, Jeff, and Mary, top 3. Question number 2. Which entertainment type or event is most popular among Gen Z craft beer drinkers from the answer choices available? Yard games like cornhole, karaoke, trivia, or a comedy show? Comedy show. Yep. So, for example, some of the questions that are phrased are which of the particular items would you be most likely to enjoy, most likely to come? And there's going to be a whole discussion about active versus passive entertainment and Gen Z wanting more or less social interaction on their visit. Question 3. Which percentage of Gen Z is willing to travel more than 10 miles to a new brewery? 20, 40, 60, or 80%? Travel more than 10 miles to a new brewery. Correct answer is 60%. Gen Z not wanting to travel more. Yeah. The most motivating and most memorable factor for Gen Zers from Taproom visits is price, food, environment, or staff. Another tough one, price. Something that's not necessarily talked about a lot, but when we're talking to Gen Z folks and surveying them about what is important to them, price is number 1, environment is number 2. So just to throw that out there. Question 5. The most popular promotion item to Gen Zers is happy hour, beer and food pairings, flight discounts, beer to go specials. This is a spoiler. There's another one here where this might get a lot of O's. The answer you're probably thinking is probably number 2. Okay, that beer and food pairings, number 1. Absolutely there. Happy hour, that is the number 2. Final question here. Laura D, where's Laura?
She's right here.
She's killing it. Last question here. Gen Zers learn about new breweries to try mostly from word of mouth, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram.
Like
Correct answer is Instagram, word of mouth being number 2. TikTok was number 4 or 5 on the list there. All right, so let's get our 3 winners. Oh. TC, awesome, great job TC. All right, so TC, Dominic and John. Where's Dominic and John? All right, I'll make sure to connect with y'all afterwards. Good deal. So, a lot to kind of take in there. Some surprises. There are some that were purposefully, kind of in there to hopefully trip you all up. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the data behind it, and then what are those things that are ultimately mattering most to Gen Z, ways to bring them back into the tap room, ways to get them there in the first place. So section 1 for drinking habits. Mind you, the data that we're going to be looking at, this is among Gen Z drinking among craft beer drinking Gen Zers. So this is not necessarily the Gen Z as a whole for the specific data. I'll be talking about Gen Z as a whole overall, just kind of giving voice to the slides. But in terms of Gen Zers that are drinking craft beer, over 70% are drinking weekly or more, making them a more active drinking population than most. So what that means for the folks that are Gen Z, that are drinking craft beer, we have to capitalize on them because they are drinking a lot of liquid. Gen Z is drinking other things. We see it in high-level statistics every day. RTDs, wine, cocktails, lower ABV. We hear a lot of these trends about the people that are more health conscious. All of that rings true. But what we're going to focus on is the people that are drinking craft beer. How can we get them, along with their friends, to the tap room? I think earlier in the room, my friend Andrew Copeland, who manages Secret Hopper, he just released a blog post, and the blog post comes from all of his tap room visit data, and that data point is Gen Z is bringing in more people per party than any other generation. So when one comes, they all will come. We just have to make sure that once they're there, there is something for everybody. The key, kind of before I move on here, is that experience piece. There's going to be perhaps one person in the group of Gen Zers that are coming in that maybe love the craft beer, and then how else are you going to capitalize on the rest of those folks? And it's creating that experience. How often do you visit breweries? Here's the question. And older generations are less likely to be visiting the tap room with as much consistency as Gen Z, making them even more valuable comparatively. So similar to those drinking habits, nearly 25% of craft beer drinking Gen Zers are in a tap room weekly or more. And according to our studies, there is no other generation that's visiting as often with that same frequency. Then when we think about why that might be, lesser familial responsibilities, a lot easier to go to a happy hour post-work, those sorts of societal factors along with their age, they're going to be in the tap room more if we can first bring them in. This is looking at the beverages consumed in the last month in addition to craft beer. Craft beer drinking Gen Zers are drinking mass-produced beer, liquor, and wine at similar levels. Cocktails trail in monthly consumption. And this is kind of a stronger hint or indicator of what can be served in the tap room, or what are the other things that people might be looking for overall. When Gen Z is first getting into craft beer, this is from a focus group study that we did earlier last year. We asked the Gen Z group, what are you first drinking for your first sip of a craft beer? And it's typically something lighter. It's typically something closer to a Miller or a Coors. That's seen as the gateway craft beer for Gen Z, and then eventually they're going to be more interested in flights, more interested in complex tastes. They have the one friend that loves IPAs, oh, let me have a sip of that. It starts with the lighter, more approachable tastes, and naturally that pathway of the Gen Z consumer, they become more of a beer geek, they become more focused on those nuanced tastes. Key learnings from this first section: Gen Zers are drinking craft beer, and when the ones that are doing so at higher rates than other generations. First craft beers are likely to be lagers and pilsners, serving as that gateway beer. And then variety is not optional, but a requirement in order to keep the non-craft beer drinking Gen Zers happy, having a good time with their friends. That's where food and experiences and entertainment, all things that we're going to talk about, matter very, very much. So section 2, we're going to look at visit motivators and memorability. First up, this chart here is looking at brewery visit motivators. So across these 10 factors, we asked, which are the factors that would motivate you to get to a brewery the most? What are the things that are going to motivate that first visit? And you see in the middle column here, Gen Z, and then on the right-hand column is the overall population. For Gen Z, the things that are going to be really, really important, there were a lot of oohs and ahs at the price. That bottom right-hand corner of the slide here with price, 79% of a motivator overall, then overall population, even mentioning that a little bit more. It's not perhaps something that you think about a lot, but also keep in mind when this data was held, 2023, second half of the year, inflation, people's pockets are hurting. It's more of a consideration for folks than we might realize. And I know that probably in the back of y'all's minds you think, well, it's a consideration for us too. Everyone's feeling it without a doubt. So having something that's perhaps a lower cost beer for y'all to make or y'all to have on your tap list, those are the easy wins where you can have Gen Z come in. Maybe there's a $6 pint, $7 pint, as opposed to an $8 or $9 pint. Those are the types of things that Gen Z is particularly thinking about. And then we talked a little bit about entertainment too, and there was another one where kind of a trick question there of which entertainment type was most popular, and this idea of comedy show versus trivia. The trivia, obviously very popular. If it works, keep doing it. But the idea with entertainment, and coupled with both service and staff here, service and staff being almost 20 percentage points lower for Gen Z than overall, it's not as much about that social interaction with them. They are perhaps more focused on having a more intimate experience with their friends as opposed to the staff themselves. Excuse me. And entertainment kind of goes hand in hand there too. If there's background entertainment, passive entertainment, something that's just kind of there that they're enjoying, but then they're also able to have that quality time with their friends, with the people they chose to come with, those are the things that are more important to this particular population. Not to say that service and staff are not important, because we'll talk later on when we look at how decisive they are. They're not decisive on what they want in terms of food and drink, whatever. Service and staff has its place and importance, but in terms of overall motivating visit drivers, it's not going to be something that's at the top of their mind. It's beer and drink variety, it's price, it's environment. Now we're looking at the most memorable visit factors. So the way that this question was framed is, after your brewery visit, what were the factors that are most memorable from your visit? And you see how this kind of shifts a little bit, where environment was a little bit lower in terms of the visit motivator. It is the near the second most, it's the second most memorable factor from their experience overall. So environment there on the bottom left-hand side, we do see staff highlighted there in red, 9%. They're not necessarily remembering the staff interactions that they had. It's not something that's as important to them. But then we also see price remaining very, very important. Beer drink variety, that's something that 35% for Gen Z being memorable, it's up there, but it's highlighted in red to show that it's much more important to the overall population as opposed to Gen Z. The overall population is much more focused on beer and drink, whereas the Gen Z is still focused on that environment. And kind of taking a break from the slides and the numbers, when we think about that just from an experience perspective, that's challenging. because Gen Z can go to so many other places than just breweries for that social experience. If you want to go and have a good time with your friends, you can go to a local pub, you can go to a bar, you can go to a bowling alley. I don't know how many Gen Zers are going to bowling alleys anymore, but that's still anywhere where you can have that social experience. That is a place of competition for craft breweries in 2024. Go for it.
Yeah, basically, there's only one thing that's over 50%. That seems to really stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are questions, we have time at the end, and there's a QR code. But if you have a question that's live, shoot it out, and we'll talk about it. All right, so now we're going to look at this motivation and memorability quadrant. And this is one of my favorite visuals in the entire slide, or entire presentation rather, because it really looks at what's going to motivate somebody to get into the tap room, and then what's going to be memorable enough to really bring them back. And then obviously the attention immediately goes to beer and drink variety, price, and environment, both being highly motivating and highly memorable. And then when we think about highly motivating and lesser memorable, you see specific beer there. And that kind of makes sense too. Like maybe for the Gen Z drinking, craft beer drinking person, they know they can get a specific beer at that place. That could be a real motivation to go to that place because they can't get it anywhere else. Honestly, one of the shockers to me when I put all this together, because I'm in this data all the time, one of the shockers to me was to see food in that yellow quadrant there. Because when we look at the overall population year after year, food is only increasing in importance. It's essentially a table stake for a lot of people when they're thinking about going out somewhere. Am I going to be able to get food, good drink, good food? If I can only get good drink, we have to plan to go somewhere else. It's likely going to be more expensive because then you're spending money at 2 venues instead of 1. You're probably going to get a drink at the second place for food anyways. And then entertainment there being that piece, which we're going to talk about a little bit more too. Another thing that was a little surprising to me, seeing pet friendliness in the bottom left. Pet ownership is up in Gen Z compared to other people. And then also the idea that Gen Zers see pets as more of their family members than older generations. That's another very statistically sound thing that we've seen kind of year over year. Not my research, but high level, macro level research on Gen Z and pet ownership. So while that pet friendliness is in the bottom there, making sure that if you are pet friendly, advertise it a lot. Make sure that people know that they can bring it, even though it's in the red there. Really key critical piece to driving that return visits for those pet owners, because if they know they can come, their pet can have a good time, they're sought after, they can come back and they know that they're going to be back because their pet can have a good time too. This next overlay is when we add in the overall population compared to Gen Z. And so the Gen Z is highlighted there with the white text and black highlight, and then the overall population being the black text, gray highlight. So I see some people taking pictures. Some things that stand out to me. Staff and service rise to the top in terms of being highly motivating for everyone else. So as we think about millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, etc., that personal interaction becomes a lot more important for those older generations. Maybe they want to talk more, maybe that they are going with their partner, their families, and that type of interaction with a staff member or how quickly the beer comes is more important to those folks than it would be for someone who's younger or doesn't necessarily have a big need to get their beer super quickly. Environment also being really important for the overall population. Entertainment kind of being similar there. But then when we go to the very top right, this is where I kind of hinted at this earlier. Food being much more important to everybody else. I just want to say food's important to everybody, despite what the data says. And I love data, I make a living on data, but you have to add common sense into it as well. Food is important for everybody, even though food is more important for non-Gen Z folks. All right, so some key learnings for this next section. Drink variety, environment, and price being the most motivating and most memorable experience factors for Gen Z. Gen Z offers greater patience with service interactions and cares slightly less about staff engagement overall. So in surveys and general research that spans beyond craft beer, there's a much higher likelihood that Gen Z is going to be more patient with staff than older populations. They are also, this is specific to craft beer, again citing my friend Andrew Copeland, who's presenting after this and then again after that this afternoon here. Gen Z also tips more on average than the other generations, according to his Taproom data set. So understanding that these folks are critical to the future of craft beer, and meeting them where they're at with lighter beers, variety tastes, those are the things that are going to drive them in. Food is a critical piece to return visits overall, despite not surfacing as highly in the data for Gen Z. All right, so now we're going to get to item and experience preferences. This particular slide here, and don't worry if you can't read the specific numbers of anything like that yet, it'll all be downloadable, you'll be able to see the specific numbers. We talk about environment a lot, and what does the environment actually mean? This slide is an excerpt from one of our national studies overall, where we do a deep dive on what environment actually means. And so the thing that stuck from the pandemic, outdoors, patio, table, dog, these are all the things that are driving the vibe of the places. And this is a really hard thing to quantify too, when thinking about what is the vibe, because normally it's a feeling. People say it's chill, it's cozy, it's whatever. And so how do we bring that to life a little bit? It does come with the types of entertainment, the vibes that you have. Do you have TVs? Do you have music playing in the background? What are the types of entertainments that you have? And top entertainment, event hosting was very popular in 2023, live music, trivia, board games, TVs. Beyond music and trivia, thinking about ways to use events to creatively get to Gen Z, tying it to the local community, tying it to niche interests, tying it to anything that you possibly can that will resemble more closely a community beacon. Gen Z cares a lot about supporting local. They care a lot about sustainability. They care a lot about all of these things, and tying that together as closely as you can, your brewery to the local community, those are the things that are going to be more successful in driving Gen Z into the tap room. But wait, it's cold, like a lot, especially here. I came up from Richmond, Virginia, where I left 70-degree weather, where I was greeted with 20-mile-an-hour winds and 20-degree temperatures last night at the airport. So embracing seasonality and coziness as you can, as it fits within the brand. So the photos there are themed bars, dressed up for Halloween, dressed up for Christmas and other holidays, and then that photo on the right is a brewery client of mine in Ohio, and they are so fortunate to have that as an upper level where they have a fireplace. It's kind of enclosed. So as much as you can, trying to envision what you want those descriptors to be. Gen Z talking things about it's chill, it's cozy. Think about what that means for you, and think about what needs to happen in order to accomplish those types of brand associations. All right, so another chart that'll likely be more useful on your phones after the fact, but I'll give plenty of voiceover to this. This gets to what are they likely to order with beer style, what are they likely to order with food. For the folks that can't read this very well, I want you to look and see that the orange bar representing Gen Z is less than the gray bar representing overall for literally every single item. What that means, Gen Z is indecisive, because the way that folks answered that question for each item, how likely are you to order this item? Answer very or extremely likely. That's what those bars represent. So the overall population, they know what they want. Gen Z, they do not. So this is where that service and staff comes in. When a Gen Z person walks into the tap room, They may not necessarily want to learn the bartender's whole life story. They probably don't want to share their life story. What would be helpful though is tell me what kind of beer I might like. So making sure that you're offering recommendations, pushing flights, not only for the sake of letting them try more of your product, but also just having higher profit margins on lower volumes of liquid. And then this is where that trivia question about beer and food pairings came in too. So understanding which beer is going to go well with this pizza that I have, or this whatever it might be, whatever you have that you're serving at the tap room, making sure you pair that, because that's going to be an easy win and also an easy sell for the tap room staff. If they are selling this, I'll quote Julie from earlier, if any of y'all were in Julie Rhodes' talk earlier, if you were having an Italian Pilsner, it goes really great with our pepperoni flatbread. So making sure that you're really capitalizing on those easy +1 situations, turning a tab from $7, $8, $9 into $20, $22 like that. The things that I will mention here kind of or were mentioned in the trivia question earlier in terms of beer styles, the ones that do come to the top, for those that might not be able to read that: ale, pilsner, lager, pale ale, IPA. Then towards the bottom are some heavier styles and more nuanced tastes. And then things in terms of likelihood of ordering particular food. The thing that I talk about with food, this list is burger, pizza, tacos, wings, nachos, tenders, barbecue, etc. Not reinventing the wheel is really key. I see a lot of the times people, and for good reason, will try new concepts, but 9 times out of 10, particularly for someone that's trying beer, maybe for the first craft beer, for first, second, third, they're new to the space, giving them something that's familiar, food-wise, is also another easy win. This is getting to that travel piece, and I really liked your comment at the beginning of who wants to travel anyways. The overall population here, almost half of Gen Z is unwilling to travel more than 10 miles. So that's, hearing that kind of really stinks. But we have to think about, okay, so if they're not going to travel more than 10 miles, how do we become the destination where it's a no-brainer for them to travel more than 10 miles? What are the types of things that we can offer? And it's going to be in that experience. So the things that we talk about in terms of those engaging events that are specific to interests that they have. Excuse me, trivia night. Everybody probably has a trivia night, but do you have a Love is Blind trivia night? Do you have something that's trending on the Netflix top 10? Something that's going to draw that audience in? And it's things that you're already doing. How can you +1 that, level up that, in order to make sure that you're drawing that crowd? And if there's a Love is Blind trivia night, my guess would be that would be a very popular, well-attended trivia night there by a younger crowd, and perhaps an older crowd too. It's anybody that comes in, that's a win. So just thinking about those different types of ways that you can draw Gen Z in, and it's going to be appealing to their interests. Gen Z, this is not on the slide, this is just talking out loud. Gen Z, in terms of the content that they interact with most online, with all of the Instagram Reels and TikToks and all of that, they want nostalgia. That's what's really important. It's all about making sure that they feel comfortable, and they just quoting high-level mental health statistics, with depression and anxiety being higher in Gen Z than other generations. That importance for nostalgia, that feel of sense of belonging, that feel of community, those are all the things that are going to draw them in, draw them closer, and ultimately create more positive brand associations overall. Because once they have that feeling, it's the idea of know, like, love, etc. Getting them further across that journey, making them know that that's a space where they can feel like themselves. Those are the things that are going to really come together. So, likelihood to visit by entertainment type, there we have the live music, movie night, comedy show, etc. Trivia actually ranking pretty darn low on that list. For anybody that can't see it, it's middle to the bottom of the pack there. So thinking about that idea of passive entertainment, that idea of something that's going on in the background, live music, movie night, comedy show, those are the things that are going to be going on where they can still talk with their friends, they can still get along and enjoy themselves. Things like trivia, bingo. I always love throwing fitness classes in this one because it's always low, but it's actually a little bit higher for Gen Z than it is otherwise. And again, this information will all be downloadable here in a minute, but just so you all have a strong idea of what that idea of passive versus active events and entertainment, particularly for Gen Z. So this is one that I honestly thought that the trivia question might have fooled y'all, but most of y'all got this right. This idea of beer and food pairings being the #1 entertainment type, or excuse me, promotion type, and then happy hours ranking second here. That ranks second across both overall and Gen Z population, so there was no rank order difference across this graph. These entertainment, or excuse me, I keep saying entertainment types. These promotions are popular most among all of these groups. Happy hour slightly edging out in the overall population over beer and food pairings. But again, we see this overall bar, the gray bar, being so much higher. And Gen Z truly, in terms of both indecisiveness of what they might want to order beer-wise, what they might want to order food-wise, and then in terms of promotion ideas here, it's all just a little bit lower. So understanding that it's a more mellow group, and in order to truly reach them and attract them, it has to be specific to their interests, specific to everyone in their group's needs, alcohol, non-alcohol, seltzer, cider, etc. Very, very critical things. Aside from craft beer, what else are you buying from the grocery store or distributors here as well? So mirroring weekly drinking habits from earlier, Gen Z purchases mass-produced domestics, wine, liquor, ciders, and seltzers with the most frequency. One thing that was particularly surprising for me to see, and one thing that I'll say don't put a lot of stock in on this slide, is that ready-to-drink cocktails being the last and lower. This popped up in our data, but that's one thing that I would say Gen Z still does love RTDs, and no data set's going to be perfect. That idea there of ready-to-drink cocktails being ranked lower, I caution you with that and point out an error, not an error, but just results in the data that don't necessarily match national level overall trends. RTDs being very, very popular yet. So mass-produced beer, wine, liquor, ciders, seltzers. Ciders actually being more purchased by Gen Z than the overall group there. That's an interesting takeaway. I'm just curious, so raise of hands in the room. How many of y'all, I'm going to go one by one, offer wine in the tap room? Ciders, seltzers, good deal. So most of y'all are already ahead of the game. That's really good. Hopefully validating then for a lot of folks in the room. So some key learnings to bring for our next section. Experiences and environments are built off of features of the brewery, outdoor seating, decor. And as much as it pains me to say this, think about the Instagram photos. Yeah.
So I'm 27, but like if you just like sit in your tap room and see how often like 22, 23-year-olds take pictures and also the difference. Like we have like an older group and they're on a brewery tour, they'll take a picture in front of a white wall. There will never be a 22-year-old group of friends that just take a picture in front of a white wall. Like you need something in your brewery that screams like this is a cool aesthetic or a cool vibe and this is what we're about. Because they'll move to take a picture in front, they'll wait in line to take a picture in front of a cool wall. The older generation is just white wall or we're standing in grass and we're just smiling and talking. Like it's just night and day difference. And it's literally how I find out about things. It's like someone puts on their Instagram, I click it, oh I know that brewery looked like that. Now I'm gonna go just because I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, but it's just the reality.
Yeah. Retweet. Yeah. I hear that. I'm 27 too, and when I walked up the escalator, and there's that big, beautiful welcome to the New York State Brewers Conference, and there's beautiful pictures there. Like that is it. That is all you need. Like a space with a cool background and logo, really showing your brand, showing off that experience. That's what's going to, exactly like he said. How are you going to find new places? Oh, look at that picture that was just posted. Gen Z is communicating with pictures. They communicate with short form content, which we're going to get to even more here in a moment. But yeah, thank you for that. Background entertainment, touched on that, don't need to drive that home anymore. And then Gen Z being more indecisive across food and drink preferences, provide information and recommendations to ensure those positive experiences. That's what service and staff matters for Gen Z. It's not necessarily how was your day, how's grad school going, how's whatever going. So making sure that you're meeting them with the information that they want, that they need. Going to look at some social media and demographics, and this will probably be the least surprising section across the entire presentation. So looking at content preferences here for Gen Z, the big orange piece of that pie chart, short videos. We asked which type of content do you want to see? Short videos, long videos, or photos. Photos is represented in gray there. That's being the lowest piece there in terms of content preference. That's been a major shift that's happened right in front of our eyes very, very quickly too. As soon as TikTok came along, TikTok just changed the world because now all of our attention spans are 7 seconds, and if you're not entertained by the first 3 or 4 seconds of a video, you're scrolling. A static image doesn't resonate anymore. They've really upped the level of the game overall. Where do you learn about new breweries to try? Instagram and word of mouth being number 1 and number 2. Exactly, I promise I didn't pay him, but when he was talking about Instagram photos and how people are learning about new breweries, Instagram is the place to be. Nearly double the amount of overall population there. So word of mouth, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We run this data again this following year. I'm sure TikTok is going to rise up even more. I think that this is a byproduct of not a lot of breweries necessarily having a super active presence on TikTok yet. And I understand that there are a lot of limitations of different types of content that you can post and restrictions as well. So by no means am I an expert in the legal piece. Question?
Thoughts on the current trends for short video? What I know first class.
Preference for short form videos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reels are getting rid of the reach and exciting babies.
Yeah. I can't necessarily speak to the specific trends and all that. I will say that generationally, it's still probably reaching the younger folks, and it might not be reaching the older generations as much, but with confidence can say that Gen Z at least, even if it's not showing up in your specific statistics yet, that's probably a space where that is some of the reach at least.
It seems like you're not paying for it, or they don't follow you, because not seeing it.
Okay.
It's a lot. If you're not an influencer, you don't have thousands upon thousands of followers that are actively sharing your stuff, and you're not paying Facebook or Instagram, they're not going to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they're already following it, so.
Yeah. All good context. Some social media usage stats, looking at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Snapchat. I'm not going to go through the specific percentages here. There's a QR code and a slide here to download everything. But the thing that I will say is related to the short form video content, Gen Z is using YouTube more than any other generation has really before. And that's surprised me. I don't use YouTube very much, but Gen Z overall does. So if you are posting short form video content, you already have it on Instagram, you have it on TikTok maybe, take the extra step, make sure you get it on YouTube. You can only reach more people. Han?
Just a quick question. Have you done any studies since Twitter got bought out in terms of what its continued reach is?
I do not have any data specifically on that, no. And then we talked a little bit about the persona breakdown earlier on, talking about social drinkers, foodies, and beer geeks. This is one of my favorite, it's very simple, but it's one of my favorite slides in the entire presentation because the blue bar represents social drinkers, the purple bar represents foodies, the black bar represents beer geeks. Gen Z on the left, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers on the right. You see that social drinker blue bar, really tall, and then it starts to curve out just a little bit there as you get to millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, etc. And then the black bar for beer geeks, 12% of Gen Z, 27% millennials, higher, and then tops out there for Gen X and baby boomers at about 30%. This is showing that journey map that we talked about where you start out with light pilsners, lagers, etc. And then you start to become really into craft beer. You start to become, oh, this is really good stuff. You develop those tastes, and then the beer geeks rise, and the social drinkers kind of fall. And it just shows that shift and that change over time. So a nice piece there to just visually see how that shift occurs as people continue to age. Putting it all together, 5 bullet points to go home and take away. Gen Z is interested in drink variety and experiences. They often don't know what they don't know. Make sure you're offering recommendations. Passive entertainment wins in driving the vibes. They expect short-form video content on channels they love. And they are already one of the, but if not the most valuable consumer segments, and absolutely the future of craft beverage companies. So there's the QR code that I've been teasing along. You can go ahead and scan that QR code, you'll get the slides. And this is also time for any remaining Q&A. We have about 13 minutes. Appreciate y'all's attention and time and questions already.
Like on the price, we were talking about price being, how do you, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the question for anybody that didn't hear it was this idea about price being both memorable and motivating. How do you necessarily take action on that? I was on a panel a while ago, and it was a brewery out of North Carolina, Full Steam Brewery, and they have a community burger, and it's $5. And it's smaller than their regular cheeseburger that they offer, but it's $5. And then they have a $5 pint of beer too, and it's lower cost for them. But it's something to really meet that need where somebody that is going in on a budget and they maybe have $20, if you're offering a small little $5 burger or a snack, something that's approachable like that, you can still have 2 beers and a burger and leave a more than 20% tip on $20 in your pocket. If you're offering even just 1 or 2 little items like that, think about the items that are highest margin for you. Bread items, pretzels, for example, hopefully being a little bit on the cheaper side for y'all. Making sure that if that's the item that you choose, it doesn't have to be your big giant pretzel with beer cheese and mustard or whatever, but a smaller version of that. Just trying to make it more approachable. Yes?
Is there any data on when the Gen Z, for all of us olds in the room, when do these little whippersnappers go out? Is it post-work, happy hour? I'm thinking about if price is that sensitive, I always shy away from discounting everything because we work too damn hard and our costs are too damn high.
Absolutely.
But if we can capture that audience at a time where it's not available to everybody, is there data that when they're going out, or are they indecisive on that as well?
That's really funny.
It was a layup.
Yeah. So I specifically do not have any data on that. Anecdotally, just from the last 3 to 5 years of my life, it's always been after work when I'm able to get people to craft breweries. I wouldn't say go and make your full business decisions based off of my personal experiences, but that would definitely be at least from my social experience in the last 3 to 5 years, what I would say.
I'll double his points. Now you have 2 pieces of data. I stay with him probably after work for like 26, 27 years old. All right. Or like Sundays, because when you're 27, the hangovers don't hit as bad, so you can Sunday fun day.
Sundays for the Z's, got it.
Sundays for the Z's.
Hey Michael, you can use my data and find out.
If there are no other questions, I'll be hanging out here. I'll be here the rest of the day. Would love to meet any of you, talk to any of you. hear what your thoughts. Yes. Sure. Yeah, so for anybody that's still listening to the question, the essence of the question is a shift from millennials not necessarily wanting to talk to people versus the Gen Z. What is the level of interaction with the staff that you want? How can you train your staff for that level of interaction? And I think the general idea of if somebody walks in and has an idea of what they want, you're probably going to be able to pick up on that. So just talking with your bartenders, your beer tenders, whatever, and the moment that you see someone sort of like, you know, deer in headlights, a little puzzled, pick up on those initial body language signals, because that's going to be someone who either hasn't ever been there before, and you need that first impression to be incredible to begin with, or they just genuinely don't know and need a little help. So I think that the idea of towing the line between socialization and just general help, making sure that the conversation, training your staff, for people that are there for the first time, priority number one, get something in their hand that they're gonna like, and then kind of let the customer lead the socialization beyond that point. So if somebody wants to talk to you, they'll talk to you. Yeah.
How do you determine like what category you like? How can you get information on
Hey, what's up, man? How are you? Good to see you. Discussion. I saw the other speakers. I figured I'd pop in. I don't know how to go back and
Yeah.
You gonna stay for our talk?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right that Gen Z is more QR friendly than other generations. I do have data on that, but kind of the first part of your question of, how do you decide which questions to go after? Those are questions from the breweries that I work with. So the surveys that we send out, all the questions that you all saw today, those are all questions asked by other breweries, and it's just organized into one. And those are wonderful additions for this year's body of work.
We have a very large 27 members coming in. We see them ordering one drink and then not going back in that hall. Bartender, we get something like toast, or is that?
It's like, let's say you go to like an Olive Garden, you check on the table. And all of them just have a library. It's the same thing like at a brewery. There's a QR code. You can take beer, piece of fries. Don't not look surprised if you're trying to. I know a lot of restaurants like beer is just a list of beer and fries. That's the least favorite thing, being limited to. Oh, that was $9 right there. All right, great QR code fries.
Like even with the QR codes and whatnot, QR codes enable things to be super fast and super easy. And for people that do want to talk, they'll probably sit somewhere where they can talk. You know what I'm saying? Sure.